When my daughter-in-law, Amanda, looked me square in the face and said, "Either you help us pay the mortgage or you'll need to pack your things and move out," I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask her to repeat herself. I just stood there in the middle of their bright kitchen, the smell of burnt toast still hanging in the air, and let the words settle across the counter like a bad taste. My son, Travis, pretended he didn't hear a thing. His eyes were locked on his phone, thumb scrolling, jaw tight. He didn't lift his head once. That silence said more than if he had joined in. It was a silence of agreement, of complicity. I gave the smallest nod like I was agreeing to something only I understood, and turned on my heel. There was no begging, no excuses, just a quiet acceptance that the line had been drawn. I walked down the short hallway that led to the guest room I had been living in for the past 4 years. The walls were covered in their life, their wedding pictures, their kids' artwork, their achievements. There was nothing of mine. The only sign I belonged to was the quilt folded at the end of my bed and a suitcase tucked underneath. I pulled that suitcase out slowly. The wheels rattled against the hardwood floors. I didn't pack right away. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the faded blue fabric. You might expect I'd feel crushed, but the truth is it felt almost clean, like the moment right after a storm when the air smells new again. Thelma didn't follow me. She had made her statement and probably expected I would sulk, maybe fuss for a few days, then come crawling back with an open wallet. She thought I'd be what I'd always been. Travis didn't come either. My own boy, whom I had carried, fed, prayed over, and helped through every scrape in his life, stood there like a stranger who didn't know me at all. That stung more than the words themselves. I sat there thinking how strange it is. When you get older, everyone warns you about the aches in your knees, the memory lapses, the doctor's appointments. But nobody warns you about the ache that comes when the very people you sacrificed for treat you like a burden, or worse, like a bank account. It wasn't always like this. When my husband, Gerald, passed away, I sold our little house in Cedar Falls. After 45 years together, the silence in those rooms was unbearable. I had some savings tucked away from years of sewing and hemming clothes for neighbours. I thought moving closer to family might help heal the loneliness. Travis had called one night and said, "Mum, we've got extra space. You can stay with us until you figure out your next steps. It'll be good for everyone." At the time, it sounded like grace. They had just bought the new house in Des Moines, and their mortgage was a stretch. I thought maybe I could be useful, and I was at first. But over the years, the arrangement shifted. It wasn't just extra space anymore. I helped cover a water bill here, bought groceries there, slipped them cash for school supplies and told myself it was temporary. That's what mothers do, right? Somewhere in there, the giving stopped being helpful and turned into expectation. And now, here I was, staring at a suitcase that had become my only way out. The house buzzed with noise, the dishwasher running, cartoons spilling from the living room. But in that bedroom, I found it quiet. For the first time in a long while, the quiet didn't scare me. It steadied me. I thought of Gerald. What would he have said if he had been there? He was never a man of many words, but I could almost hear his voice. "Mary Ann, don't let anyone back you into a corner you don't belong in." I laid out a neat stack of my most important things on the bed. My Bible, a photo of Gerald from our 40th anniversary trip, the old sewing kit I never let out of my reach, and one change of clothes. That's all I needed for now. The sound of the twins laughing echoed from the other end of the house. That laugh, that pure, bubbling laugh, is what had kept me there long after I should have left. But I knew deep down I wasn't leaving them. I was leaving the weight of being treated like an open purse. As I zipped up my suitcase, I caught sight of myself in the mirror on the closet door. I didn't see a defeated old woman. I saw someone who had spent years giving more than she ever kept for herself, and finally decided enough was enough. They told me I had to choose. So I did. And when I walked out of that bedroom with my suitcase rolling behind me, I felt lighter than I had in years. I didn't slam doors. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe anyone a dramatic exit. I just walked down the hall, past the same family photos I wasn't in, past Travis standing there with his head still bent toward that phone, and past Amanda's smug silence in the kitchen. I reached for the front door, turned the knob, and stepped out into the fading daylight. The air outside was cool, sharp against my face, like the first breath after being underwater too long. That's the moment I knew this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of me finally standing tall. I didn't go far. I couldn't. I had exactly $327 in my purse and a suitcase with a handful of clothes. I walked to the end of their street, past the manicured lawns and the perfectly placed flower pots, until I reached a little coffee shop on the corner. It wasn't much, but it was warm. I settled into a corner booth, ordered the cheapest coffee on the menu, and let my mind wander back. It wasn't just a suitcase I was leaving behind. It was years of memories, some good, most of them full of the kind of quiet sacrifice no one ever talks about. The silent years after Gerald passed. He had been my rock, my safe harbour. When he was gone, it felt like the ocean had swallowed me whole. Our little house was a monument to our life together. The porch swing he built, the rose bushes he tended to, the kitchen where we danced to old records. Selling it felt like tearing a piece of my soul out. But I told myself it was for the best, for a new beginning. I convinced myself I was doing it to make things easier on Travis, to be closer, to be a help. And he and Amanda had been so welcoming at first. They called me Mama-in-law, and Amanda would bring me a cup of tea in the morning. I remember the first time I noticed the shift. I was sitting on the couch folding laundry, and Amanda came home from work looking stressed. She tossed her purse on the counter and sighed. "We just got a bill from the school for the twins' art supplies," she said to Travis. "It's insane how much they want." Travis just grunted from his spot on the couch playing a video game. I heard her sigh again, and then, almost without thinking, I reached into my purse and pulled out a 20. "Here," I said, offering it to her. "That should cover it." She looked at the bill, then at the 20, and then back at the bill. A small, almost imperceptible smile played on her lips. "Oh, Mary Ann, you don't have to," she said, but her hand was already reaching for the money. "It's fine," I said, shrugging it off. "It's just a little something." That's how it started. A small 20 here, a 50 for gas there, 100 for a birthday party. It was always a little something until the little somethings added up to everything. They never asked directly at first. They'd just talk about a problem, a bill, a car repair, and I would offer. It became a habit. Their problems became my responsibility. I found myself checking my bank account not to see if I could afford a new dress or a trip, but to see if I could cover their unexpected expenses. My savings, my nest egg, slowly started to shrink. I tried to talk to Travis about it once. It was a Saturday morning, and he was working on his car in the garage. I brought him a glass of iced tea. "Travis," I started, my voice soft. "Things feel a little different. You and Amanda seem to be struggling, and I'm a little worried." He looked up, a smudge of grease on his cheek. "Mum, we're fine," he said too quickly. "It's just the economy, you know? Things are tough for everyone, but we've got it covered." He patted my hand and smiled a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Don't you worry about us. You've done more than enough." But I knew he wasn't telling the truth. I could see the stress lines etched around his eyes, the tired slump of his shoulders, and I knew they needed my help. The problem was, I was becoming less of a mother and more of a co-signer. I wasn't being asked for advice or comfort, I was being asked for cash. The worst part was, I felt like I had to earn my keep. The unspoken understanding was that since I wasn't paying rent, I would contribute in other ways. So I did all the housework. I cleaned, I cooked, I ran errands, and of course I watched the twins. My days revolved around them. I'd wake up before dawn to make breakfast, get the kids ready for school, then spend the day cleaning their house, all while listening to the silence of my own life. It felt like I had traded my independence for an indefinite stay in a house where I didn't truly belong. The final straw had been their grand plan. A bigger house. They wanted to upgrade to a sprawling place with a 4-car garage and a huge yard for the twins. I saw the listing online. The price was eye-watering. I remember asking Travis how they planned to afford it, and he had just waved a hand vaguely. "Don't worry, Mum, we've got it handled." That's when I heard Amanda mention my jewellery. "Your mother has all that jewellery from her mother and her grandmother," she had said to Travis one evening, loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. "The diamond earrings alone must be worth a fortune. We could use that for the down payment." My heart had dropped into my stomach. Those pieces weren't just jewellery. They were heirlooms. Each one told a story. The small diamond necklace was from my grandmother, a simple piece she'd saved for by doing laundry for wealthy families. The sapphire ring was from Gerald, an anniversary gift on our 15th. These weren't things to be sold off for a bigger garage. They were pieces of my history, my family, my love story. That night, as I sat in the coffee shop, a chilling realization washed over me. I wasn't just a guest. I was an asset. I wasn't their family. I was their investment. They had looked at my life, my memories, my very being, and saw dollar signs. And the jewellery, the final tangible link to the love I had lost, was the last thing they wanted to squeeze out of me. They thought I would give them that too. And maybe, once upon a time, I would have. But that day, in their kitchen, something had snapped. I was no longer the quiet, agreeable Mary Ann. The coffee cup felt warm in my hands. The rain had started to fall outside, streaking the window panes. I pulled out my phone, and with trembling fingers, I typed a name into the search bar. Barbara Worth, jewellery appraiser. The time for quiet sacrifice was over. It was time for a little action. Barbara Worth's office was tucked away on the second floor of an old brick building downtown. The bell over the door chimed a soft, welcoming sound as I stepped inside, a stark contrast to the hollow feeling I'd had leaving my son's house. The air smelled of old paper and something sweetly metallic, like the insides of a jewellery box that had held secrets for years. Barbara was a woman with kind eyes and a cascade of silver hair that she kept tied back in a neat bun. She looked at me over the top of her glasses, a gentle smile on her face. "Mary Ann, isn't it?" she asked, her voice as warm as the air in the room. "The name on the email. Please, have a seat." I placed the small velvet box on her desk. Inside were the 3 pieces I had decided to part with, my grandmother's necklace, my great-aunt's brooch, and the small, delicate pearl earrings my mother had given me on my wedding day. These were not the pieces Amanda had her eyes on. The diamond ring Gerald had given me on our 15th anniversary was still safe in my purse, a piece I would never let go of. This was my quiet revolution. Barbara took out a magnifying loupe and a soft cloth, handling each piece with the reverence of a historian. "These are exquisite, Mary Ann," she said, her voice soft. "The craftsmanship on this brooch is from a lost time. You don't see work like this anymore." She talked about the history of the pieces, where the stones might have come from, and the style of the setting. She didn't just see a woman trying to make a quick buck. She saw the story in the gold and the gems, and as she spoke, a strange calm came over me. These pieces weren't just objects. They were anchors to my past, to the women who came before me, to the love I had shared. And for the first time, I felt like I was the one who was in control of their future, not someone else. "What is your goal?" Barbara finally asked, looking up from the brooch. "Are you looking to sell or just get a valuation?" I took a deep breath. "I'm looking to sell," I said, my voice steady. "I need to start a new life, and I need a new life that's just mine." A knowing smile touched her lips. "I see," she said. She didn't pry. She didn't ask what happened. She just nodded, as if she'd heard this story 100 times. A story of a woman finding her way back to herself one step at a time. She gave me a valuation that made my heart leap. It was more than I had dared to hope for. Enough to put a down payment on something small, something all my own. Enough to finally be free. I sold the pieces to her on the spot. I walked out of that building a new woman. I still had my suitcase and my few $100s, but I also had a cashier's check that felt like a lifeline. I felt a surge of energy I hadn't felt in years. I didn't head back to Travis and Amanda's house. Instead, I found a small motel a few towns over. It was a humble place, but the air felt different. It was the air of freedom. I spent the next 2 days in that motel room, a map spread out on the bed. I wasn't just looking for a place to live, I was looking for a home. I searched for small towns, quiet neighborhoods, places where I could start over. And that's when I saw it. A small ad for a 1-bedroom condo by a lake. Quiet living, walking trails, beautiful sunsets. The picture showed a cozy little place with a small porch and a view of a glassy lake. It was exactly what I had been dreaming of, a dream I had long ago buried under the weight of someone else's expectations. I called the real estate agent right away. It was a little further from the city, but that was a good thing. It was my own little piece of the world, a place where I could sew, read, and just be. The agent, a friendly woman named Sarah, told me the condo was still available and agreed to meet me the next day. I had so much to do, and I was doing it all on my own terms. I didn't need to ask permission. I didn't need to explain myself. I didn't need to consult with a son who wouldn't even look me in the eye, or a daughter-in-law who saw me as nothing more than a source of income. This was my money, my choice, my life. I knew that soon the phone calls would start. They would wonder where I was. They would assume I was sulking, waiting for them to apologize. They would probably think I had gone to a friend's house to lick my wounds. They would have no idea that I wasn't licking wounds at all. I was planning my escape. I felt a quiet thrill run through me. The strongest revenge isn't a loud confrontation. It's not about shouting or making someone else feel small. It's about taking your power back quietly, surely, and without fanfare. It's about building a life so full of peace and joy that their drama can no longer touch you. They had wanted me to sell my past to fund their future. Little did they know I had sold my past to buy my own. For the next 3 days, my phone was a silent monument to my son's indifference. Not a single text. Not one missed call. I checked it so often that the screen was always lit up. I told myself it was for the real estate agent, Sarah, but I knew I was hoping for something else. Something that would tell me I was still their mother, not just their live-in ATM. The silence was a powerful tool, a kind of weapon. It wasn't just that they weren't calling. It was the fact that they hadn't even noticed I was truly gone. They probably thought I'd gone to stay with my sister Emily in another state, as I sometimes did for a weekend trip. They would expect me to call, to tell them I was fine, to give them my new address, but I was done giving them information they didn't deserve. I was done giving them any piece of me at all. On the 4th day, as I was sitting in a cafe looking at floor plans, my phone finally rang. It was Travis. My heart gave a little jolt, a flicker of that old hope. I took a deep breath before answering. "Hello," I said, my voice calm and even. "Mum, where are you? We've been looking for you," he said, his voice a panicked mix of confusion and irritation. He wasn't worried. He was inconvenienced. "Oh, you have?" I replied, letting the question hang in the air for a moment. "You haven't called. I assumed everything was fine." "We thought you'd call us," he said, and I could hear Amanda in the background, her voice a low, agitated murmur. "Why didn't you call? The twins have been asking about you." "I figured if you were looking for me, you would have called," I said, a little more edge in my voice than I intended. "It's been 4 days, and I haven't heard a single word from either of you, but I'm fine. Thank you for asking." He stammered for a moment. "Well, we thought you were just, taking a break. Look, we've been trying to get a hold of the bank, but we need to talk to you about the mortgage. We have an appointment tomorrow to discuss the down payment, and we need to finalize things." The mask had slipped. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about the twins missing me. It was about the money. I felt the last little shred of hope shrivel up and die. "I won't be coming to the bank appointment, Travis," I said, my voice now as cold as a winter morning. A long silence followed. I could practically hear him processing my words. "What? Mum, what are you talking about? You have to be there. You said you would—" "I never said I would do anything, Travis," I interrupted him. "You and Amanda gave me an ultimatum, and I made a choice. I'm sorry, but I won't be helping you with the down payment." I heard a sharp intake of breath from Amanda in the background. She snatched the phone. "Marianne, this isn't fair. You can't just do this to us. We're your family." "And what was I to you, Amanda?" I asked, a bitter smile on my face. "A mother? Or a source of income? You were ready to sell off my husband's and my grandmother's things to pay for your bigger house. Those weren't just objects. They were my history. And you treated them like they were nothing." She went silent. I let the words hang in the air between us. The truth was a heavy thing, and it finally felt like it was her turn to carry it. "I'm not doing this to you," I continued, my voice firm. "I'm doing this for me, for my life. You'll figure it out. You'll have to." I hung up the phone before she could say another word. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was from the adrenaline of finally, after all these years, standing up for myself. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. I didn't feel sad. I felt a righteous kind of anger, the kind that fuels you and pushes you forward. The next day, I met Sarah, the real estate agent at the condo. It was just as the picture had promised, cozy and bright with a small kitchen and a breathtaking view of the lake. We walked the property, and I imagined my life there, waking up to the sound of birds instead of the frantic morning rush, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea watching the sun rise, planting a small herb garden. This wasn't just a place to live, it was a sanctuary. It was my future, and I was going to build it brick by brick, on my own. As I signed the papers for the down payment, my hand didn't shake this time. It felt steady, sure, and strong. I looked at the cashier's check I had from Barbara Worth. Amanda and Travis had no idea that they had told me to sell my past, and in doing so they had given me the keys to my future. I knew this was just the first step. There would be more confrontations, more pleas, more guilt trips, but I was ready for them. Because for the first time in a very long time I was living for myself, and that was a feeling worth fighting for. I spent the next week in a quiet whirlwind of new beginnings. Sarah, my real estate agent, was a godsend. She helped me finalize the paperwork for the condo, and I found a local moving company, a small family business, that could help me retrieve my things from my son's house. I intentionally chose a date for the movers to arrive when I knew Travis and Amanda would be home. I wasn't going to sneak out. This was a clean break, and it needed to be acknowledged. The day of the move, I arrived first in a rented car. The familiar sight of their house, with the manicured lawn and the too big porch, felt different now. It no longer felt like a place I had to earn my keep in. It felt like a stage, and I was about to play my final scene. I walked up to the door and rang the bell. I could hear the twins laughing inside, a sound that, for so long, had been my anchor. Amanda opened the door, her face a mask of confusion that quickly morphed into anger. "Marianne? What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice sharp. "We've been worried sick." I didn't dignify that lie with a response. "I'm here to get my things," I said simply. "The movers will be here in a few minutes." Travis appeared behind her, his face pale. "Mum, what is this? What movers? We need to talk about this." "We've had our talk, Travis," I said, looking him in the eye for the first time in what felt like forever. "It's time to get my things." As if on cue, a large moving truck pulled into the driveway. The two men inside got out and began to unstrap a dolly. Amanda's eyes widened in horror. You're really doing this? You're leaving?" "Yes, Amanda," I said, "just as you asked me to." She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her a chance. I walked past her and went straight to my room. I didn't want to get into a shouting match in front of the twins. The movers were quiet and efficient, taking my suitcase and the boxes I had packed before I left. They didn't ask questions. They just followed my directions with a quiet professionalism that I deeply appreciated. When they were done with the inside, I pointed to the garage. "I have a few boxes in there and some of my sewing machines," I told them. That's when the real confrontation began. Travis stood in the garage entrance, blocking the way. "Mum, we need to talk about the mortgage," he said, his voice pleading. "We're going to lose the house, don't you care?" "I've cared about this house for 4 years, Travis," I said, my voice low and firm. "I've cared about your bills, your groceries, your car payments. I've cared about your life so much that I forgot to care about my own." Amanda stepped forward, her hands on her hips. "We never asked you to do that, Marianne. You offered. And you accepted." I shot back, a fire finally igniting inside me. "You didn't just accept, you came to expect it. You came to depend on it. And then you tried to take the last of what was mine. My jewellery, my history, so you could have a bigger house, so you could have a 4-car garage you can't afford." The accusation hung in the air. Travis looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "Mum, we were just desperate. We thought you would help us." "And you were right. I did help," I said, walking past him and into the garage. The movers followed, their eyes respectfully averted. "I helped for years. And when I stopped, you threw me out. You showed me exactly what you thought I was worth. So now you'll have to figure it out for yourselves." As the movers loaded my things into the truck, I saw a familiar box sitting on a shelf. It was the box with all the family photos I had taken over the years. I reached for it, but Travis suddenly grabbed my arm. "What are you doing? Those are our family memories," he said. "No, Travis," I said, my voice filled with a final heartbreaking clarity. "These are my memories. I took all of these photos. You were too busy scrolling on your phone to notice." I pulled my arm away and picked up the box. It was heavy, filled with the weight of a lifetime of love and sacrifice. It was all I was taking from this house. As the movers closed the back of the truck, I looked at Travis and Amanda one last time. There were no tears, no apologies, no hug, just silence, a silence that spoke volumes. I turned and walked to my car, got in, and drove away. As I drove, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had found what I was looking for, not a house, but a home. And the best part was, it was all mine. I spent the next 2 weeks in a blissful state of solitude. The condo was everything I had hoped for. The first day, I just sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, and watched the sun set over the lake. I didn't worry about anyone's dinner, anyone's laundry, or anyone's feelings but my own. It was a kind of freedom I hadn't realised I was missing. I unpacked my few boxes, meticulously placing each item in its new home. The old family photo album sat on a small wooden table, and I found myself looking through it for hours, smiling at the memories that were mine alone. I set up my old sewing machine in the corner, a trusty friend I hadn't used in years. The hum of its motor felt like the song of my own life finally playing again. The only time my newfound peace was disturbed was by the phone calls. They were a torrent at first, from both Travis and Amanda. They would alternate, their tones shifting from panicked to angry to tearful and back again. "Mum, please, just tell us where you are," Travis would plead. "We can fix this." "Marianne, we are going to lose the house. Don't you care what happens to your grandchildren?" Amanda would shriek, using the twins as a weapon as she had so many times before. I let most of the calls go to voicemail. When I did answer, my words were brief and to the point. "I'm not coming back," I would say. "This is not my problem to solve." The first time I said it, Travis was silent. "Mom, how can you say that?" he finally whispered. "Because it's the truth," I told him. "You and Amanda are adults. You made a decision to buy a house you couldn't afford. You made a decision to put all of your financial burdens on me. And you made a decision to give me an ultimatum. Now, you have to live with the consequences of those choices, not me. And then I hung up. It felt like I was cutting a cord that had been binding me for years. With each call I didn't answer, and with each word I spoke, I felt stronger. I wasn't being cruel. I was being fair. I was teaching them a lesson they had long needed to learn, that their actions had consequences, and I would no longer be their safety net. Then, one rainy afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I peered through the peephole and saw Amanda standing there, her shoulders slumped, her hair plastered to her face from the rain. She looked defeated, and for a moment I almost felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered the ultimatum, the way she had looked at me as if I was nothing, and I hardened my resolve. I opened the door, but only a crack. "Amanda," I said, my voice flat. "Marianne, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice small. "I'm begging you, just come back. We're going to lose the house. We have nothing." "You have each other," I said, pushing the door open just enough to show her I was not leaving. "You have your jobs, your family. You don't have nothing. You just don't have me to bail you out anymore." Her eyes welled up with tears. "But the twins! We can't do this to them." "No," I said, and this was the part that truly stung. "You're doing this to them, not me. Your choices led to this, and for the first time in a long time, I'm choosing for myself." She looked at my face, searching for a sign of weakness, of capitulation. There was none. She finally understood. I wasn't a bank account. I was a person, and my well was finally dry. She said nothing else. She just turned and walked away, back to her car, and drove off into the rain. As I closed the door, I felt no triumph, just a quiet sense of peace. The storm had passed. The real work was just beginning, and it was all for me. The weeks that followed were filled with the kind of simple, quiet joy I hadn't known in years. I decorated my new condo with things I loved: a bright yellow vase for fresh flowers on the kitchen counter, a small, comfy armchair in the living room just for reading, and a large, soft rug for my feet. I started a small balcony garden, growing herbs and a few bright flowers. It was all mine, every single leaf and petal. I also re-established old friendships that had withered while my life was consumed by my son's family. My friend Carol from my old quilting group came over for lunch. We laughed for hours, catching up on each other's lives. I even reconnected with a woman from my old book club, a man named Frank, who had asked me out for coffee. I found myself looking forward to our little dates. He was kind and funny, and he listened to me in a way I hadn't been listened to in years. He wasn't looking for a handout or a caretaker. He was just a person who wanted to share a good conversation. But the real sign that things had changed came one afternoon when I was outside pulling weeds from my garden. A car pulled up and I saw it was Amanda. She got out of the car looking different. Her shoulders weren't slumped with defeat this time. She stood tall, her eyes clear. "Marianne," she said, her voice a little softer than I was used to. I straightened up. "Amanda," I replied, a little surprised to see her. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" She didn't get angry. She didn't launch into an attack. Instead, she took a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize," she said. I was so stunned I just stood there holding a handful of weeds. "For what?" I asked, my voice cautious. "For all of it," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "For treating you like a bank. For using your history to get a bigger future for ourselves. For not seeing you as a person, but as a resource." Her words were raw, honest. She wasn't trying to manipulate me. She was just telling the truth. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued. "But I wanted you to know that the lesson, it sank in. We didn't lose the house, we sold it." My eyes widened. I hadn't heard anything about this. "We decided to sell it and buy a smaller one, a house we could actually afford on our own," she explained. "We're not drowning anymore. For the first time, we're not constantly worried about the next bill, the next payment. We feel free, and we never would have gotten here if you hadn't left." Tears started to well up in her eyes. "You taught us a lesson we never wanted to learn, but one we desperately needed. You taught us to stand on our own 2 feet. And you taught me that family isn't about what people can give you. It's about being there for them no matter what, and accepting them for who they are. I just nodded, unable to speak. I had to turn away for a moment so she wouldn't see the tears in my own eyes. It wasn't a triumph I felt. It was a relief. "I know you won't come back," she said, her voice now filled with a quiet strength. "And I understand why. We were wrong. We were so wrong. But I just wanted to say, thank you. Thank you for not bailing us out. Thank you for showing us the real meaning of strength." She didn't try to hug me. She didn't ask for a favor. She just looked at me with a new respect in her eyes, and then she turned and walked back to her car. As she drove away, a small smile touched my lips. The past wasn't a burden anymore. It was a story with a happy ending. A few days after Amanda's visit, Travis called. I answered, my heart feeling a little more open than it had been in months. His voice was different, stripped of its usual bravado and the frantic need that had defined our recent conversations. "Mom," he began, his voice barely a whisper, "Amanda told me she talked to you." "She did," I said. "It was a good conversation." "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said. The words weren't a plea. They were an admission of guilt. "I was a coward. I let Amanda do all the talking, all the fighting. I let her put all the pressure on you because it was easier than facing our own problems. I should have protected you. I should have told her no. I should have been a better son." I let him talk, hearing the genuine pain and regret in his voice. "I love you, Mum," he said. And this time, the words felt like they came from his heart, not his pocketbook. We were wrong. We got so caught up in what we thought we needed that we forgot about what was really important. We lost our way. "We all do sometimes, Travis," I said, my voice softening. "The important thing is that you found your way back. You found a different path. A better path." We talked for a long time. Not about money, not about houses, but about us. We talked about his new, smaller home and how he and Amanda were learning to manage on their own. He told me the twins were doing well and that they missed their grandmother. I promised to visit soon on my own terms, of course. The relationship wasn't perfect, but it was honest. For the first time in years, it felt like the love was unconditional, without any hidden agenda. As the weeks turned into months, I fully settled into my new life. The condo by the lake was my sanctuary. I had found a small group of women who loved to knit, and we would meet once a week, our needles clicking, our voices full of laughter and gossip. My newfound friendship with Frank blossomed into something more. We were two people who had found quiet in their later years, and we enjoyed sharing it together. Our days were simple, filled with walks by the lake, long conversations over coffee, and the shared joy of a life well earned. One evening, as I was sitting on my porch watching the last of the sun slip below the horizon, I thought about everything that had happened. The ultimatum, the suitcase, the jewelry, the quiet, powerful rebellion. My son and his wife had thought they were asking me to give up my most cherished memories for a bigger house. What they didn't know was that they were giving me the gift of a lifetime, the chance to live for myself. They told me to sell my jewelry, and I did. But I didn't sell it for their down payment. I sold it for my own. I sold it for a new life. A life where I was valued for who I was, not what I could provide. The journey wasn't about revenge. It was about self-respect. It was about recognizing my own worth. It was about standing up for the woman I was, the woman I had always been, and finally giving her the freedom she deserved. The best revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about healing yourself. It's about finding peace, not proving a point. And in the end, the price of my peace was worth every single diamond and every single tear. I had sold my jewelry and bought my life, and that was the best deal I had ever made. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever felt invisible or taken for granted, please like, share and subscribe to Her Retribution so more women can hear this message. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my shoes?